Welcome to Elected, a podcast for women in and around politics and our active accomplices. I'm your host, Sarah Elder Chaminara, and today I have multiple guests. Hi, George Affleck and Mike
Hey,
Wilson. It's nice to see you.
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Hi.
So before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, it's important to me to share my personal commitment to learning the history of colonialism and the ongoing systemic violence and oppression against Indigenous peoples. The land where I live, work, and record from is the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. And while I am in Alberta, you are in my beloved home province
Mhm.
of British Columbia. Are you both in Vancouver?
Yeah, we live a block away from each other, I think, in downtown Vancouver. So Emil's our other partner's in Calgary, but so he's closer to you. But yeah, we're based in downtown Vancouver.
And all three of you are from BC, just like me.
Yes, born and bred.
Yes.
I was
Which,
actually in Bella Coola.
Bella
Really? I
Coola.
didn't even know that, Mike. Really?
You were born in Bella Coola?
I was, yeah.
Really? Okay, George, your turn. Where were you born?
North Vancouver. So I made it all the way across this from the sea bus into the big city, and I never left.
Well, and I had to come in from the rural location of Mission. So
Well, I did spend some time in Langley growing up, so I know Mission well.
yeah. And Emil, if he was here, he would tell us that he is very proudly from Kamloops.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So let's get into this because this is the first time I've actually had two men on the podcast. And this is the second episode where I've had men on as guests as well. So the reason for this is because you three are doing something very unusual, I think, in the Canadian political landscape right now, which is you are offering up your expertise seemingly for free to train, mentor, and consult for candidates and election campaign teams, I believe primarily in Canada, with something that you've called the Campaign University. So, Mike, what is this project all about?
Yeah, well, it's thanks for having us on. It's great to be here. It's something George and I actually had talked about a long time. It was originally George's idea, but you may not know from me, I've worked in politics for the last 15 years. I was in Christy Clark's staff in her entire government. And George and I have both been in and out of politics, and myself, especially in the back room for a long time. And one thing we noticed was, especially in the last 5 years, but increasingly so in the last 1 or 2 years, good people, like people with good careers, a good standing, good job that would make excellent public servants, were one of two things: either looking at politics and seeing how it's devolved and just saying, I don't want to touch that at all, or actually stepping their foot in the ring and wanting to, give back to their community and take a run at it. But when they got there, they were just hit with that political machine, party politics, and just devolved. And then, were eaten up and never want to touch it again. So we were, and then the result of that has been candidates, the level of candidate or the caliber of candidate going down and down and down. It's becoming more just about power and, your brand rather than actually doing something for your community. So we wanted to do something where we would take our skill set and actually empower people who want to go into office so they were prepared before they got into the game, prepared to win. And that's sort of the genesis, was getting better people back into politics.
And I'm sorry, I said before we started recording, I was going to do like a high level intro of both of you, and then I just totally glossed over it. So sorry about that. You did a good job of doing it for yourself, but George, I'll do it for
Yes.
you. So
Okay.
you're a former Vancouver City Councillor, and you are very well known, I think, to so many British Columbians. And you're now also in the world of political communications and strategy. But tell me who is this for? Is this for people on the center right spectrum that of the home that the three of us, kind of came up in, or is it for everybody?
No, in fact, for me, and having been in office, and also before I even was in politics as an elected person, I'd been involved in campaigns behind the scenes. I ran and won in my first campaign, partly because I own a marketing agency and I kind of had my own strategy, and I was given the freedom in that first campaign to do what I want and raise my own funds. It was a very unusual campaign. And I think part of that, because I had that ability, I won, whereas other people within my own party did not, except one other person. So we're definitely trying to make this for everybody. I really want to make sure that this is nonpartisan, that this is something that anybody who wants to run for politics, I don't care where you are, because believe me, having been elected and been in opposition, and being, I'm considered center to right of center, certainly in Vancouver, up against a very sort of somewhat left-wing party in Vancouver. I was sort of the face of the opposition, but I always, understood that democracy needs both sides of the debate. And if you don't have good people on both sides, you don't have good politics, you don't have good democracy. And so in my years in office and behind the scenes, as Mike said, finding great people, interested people, willing people. The number one thing I always would go, I did these things when I was in high school and I don't want anybody to know about that, or I don't want that to be, that is like always the thing. Oh, I wouldn't want anything in my background getting out. You're like, believe me, that doesn't matter anymore. It really is about what you do now. And we really wanted to make this something that, we're giving away all of our secrets. You're right. And it's something that I think is important. I'm worried about democracy, and I'm worried about the institution of democracy, and I'm worried about our governments, not only in Canada, but in the US and anywhere. This process that we talk about, there's a whole course that's a part of this. It's really the A to Z, or if you're American, a Z, or Z or Z, ZZ, sorry, get those around, of how to do this. And if I'd had this when I started running, to know all these things that we're giving away in the Facebook group, it would have made my life so much easier.
So what are some of those things specifically that you're giving away that you wish you had known, and people now listening can hear and say, I want to run, or I should be doing this, or maybe I shouldn't be doing that?
I'll let Mike take that one.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really everything. So in the phase, we have a course which you can purchase, but we also put all the elements of that course in the Facebook group and then share. But really, it's Sarah, everything you need to know to run. So what I've seen a lot in my career, and George too, is people coming in and maybe they're good at advertising or they're really strong on an issue, but they don't know about building a campaign team or data management or analyzing polling or making their speech or their debate really strong. So when they got into a party environment or even a campaign, it was basically a bunch of politicos telling them what to do and what was right and what was wrong, because there's this knowledge gap in 80% of the campaign they're trying to run, even though they're picked because they're such a star in that 20%. So what we wanted to do is give everyone the full gamut of information. So even though maybe you're not running your own data and your own polling and your own team and your volunteer coordinating, you actually know how those work and what's doing a good job in that area and what's not doing a good job. So you're fully informed on the full 100%. And that's putting the power sort of back in the candidate's hand rather than the party's hand or the politico's hand. And we just think that's really empowering. So that's why we teach everything from, looking at the riding you want to run in or the city and analyzing the issues and the polling, to building your team, to doing your ads, to doing your speeches, to building a data game, to all the legal requirements and everything in between, building a good team, and even sharing some of the nuances and secrets about running. So you know everything before you go.
So I have to ask, what happened to all of us in the party political system that made maybe each of us shy away or wary of that system and structure in some way? Because I am as well, having worked in politics, and it's really not about the individual. It might be in name and only, unless it's the leader. And one of my own hesitancies, if I was to ever run one day, in a party system, would be that I understand the ins and outs of it and am very cautious about that, because I wouldn't be able to speak my mind freely, for example, on every issue, whipped votes, just the whole system. So is there something like, what was it for you in party politics, George, that maybe put you on this path of advocating for the individual within the system?
Yeah, well, just Google the NPA and you'll find out why I left politics. It's for me, it's really, I feel like, having, I'm not a very good employee, for example. I've owned my own business for more than 20, almost 25 years. And one of the weird things for me about being in politics, it was kind of like being an employee where you had to answer to people, and I'm not talking about the actual people of the city, but the parties, which was very interesting to me, how much influence they potentially have on the candidates if they don't feel confident in what they're doing. And so obviously I'm a fairly confident person, and I had a feeling, I kind of carved my own path, which can be very ineffective in party politics, depending on where you are. So I want to make sure we understand that this is the campaign university is for really how do you get elected. Once you're in office, it's a whole other course. And I think that's really important to understand, that there is that issue of, slate voting and all that kind of stuff. And, you gotta go in aligned and all those things. That's another game altogether. And we don't get into that, but we do get into how do you navigate? How do you get in? How do you just get your foot in the door with the party? How do you even ask the right questions? Who do you talk to? What are parties looking for? What is it that makes you potentially a good candidate if you think you are interested? And if you're a person that people keep saying you should run for office, what are the things that you should think about if you're that person? And what are your fears, as I mentioned earlier, that you might be worried about that will come out? And how do you deal with those things if they are? So it kind of covers a lot of different areas. I think that, unfortunately, in the recent years, the whole negativity of politics have, in a sense, strangely helped deal with the issue of people worried about their past, because I think the craziness that we're seeing these days in politics provide us an ability to kind of go, you can get over anything pretty much now. A few years ago, you might have been worried about that. Now you can really find a way. And obviously there's extremes, but our goal here is, when people would tell me what they thought that would be embarrassing, I'm like, that's not embarrassing. Don't worry about that. That is not something you need to worry. In fact, it gives you personality, that whatever that issue might be, it gives you an ability, it makes you real. And we can work with that. And certainly for me behind the scenes, and I'm sure Mike too, and Neil, dealing with candidates as campaign team members, those are things we deal with all the time. And it's really just about communicating what it is that might come out that you need to deal with.
So obviously the three of you are all men in a world dominated by men in politics, obviously. And so the world that I am, more in is one of championing and advocating for women in politics. And so, I hear a lot of these, obviously, the same concerns around, like, how do I get involved? Where do I start? Like, what experience do I need? I don't want it to, I don't want this to be an issue. I don't want that to be an issue. Is there anything in Campaign University that takes a gendered lens to any of these issues? Just because they can be different in terms of, for example, access to networks, or a stay-at-home mom who has a lot of professional experience, who might not see a path of being able to translate that into a political resume, but it's definitely there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the whole thing is designed to have a personal approach. So especially if you're taking the course, we get with you one-on-one. I've worked with lots of female candidates over the years, including Christy Clark, but many at the councillor level and mayor level, in both Canada and the US. And there are different things, especially around family, that you have to navigate that are very important. And, one of the, just to go back to your other questions there relating to this, is one of the things that I saw, even being in her office, was just that clash, right, of the boys' club nature of politics, and especially party politics, but also, governing offices, and then the needs of a female candidate or having the voice. And so we wanted to actually have a place where females could come in and understand that game a little bit more. So when you're sitting at the table and you're thinking, what is this? Like, why are we not talking about the issue? We're having this crazy political conversation that seems to make no sense, and everyone's just kind of knifing each other in the back, that you're actually, prepared for that. and able to remove yourself from it a little bit and look at it objectively and understand the game and control your own mental health, which is something that, Katie talked about a bit in campaign university training as well. So we cover all that stuff, and even Indigenous candidates who I've campaign managed before, it's the same thing. So yeah, we want to be very personalized for whatever you're coming to the table and whatever your issues are. And I think that especially relates to female candidates who, sometimes the men, they're almost wanting that knife fight to be going on, whereas some of the female candidates I worked with just want to get the job done and do a good job at it. And so it's shocking to watch all that other political garbage that's going on in and around it.
Yeah, and
There's
I think
also
it's that garbage also that deters qualified women
100%.
and professional people in general from wanting to get into the arena, because they're like, and I hear it all the time, why would I subject myself to that nonsense, that garbage?
This is literally why we started campaign. This exact,
income levels too, I think, is something that I always found challenging. And certainly for me, having not been part of some kind of private school growing up or anything like that, I did notice that there was this disparate, this situation where you had people who were well connected, that seemed to only connect with each other and encourage each other. Meanwhile, those who on the outside, whatever gender, felt left out. And certainly for me, having grown up as a middle to lower class kid, in the burbs and not being a part of some kind of fancy network, I found that intimidating. And it's important that people don't, because guess what? A lot of those people that you might be intimidated by are desperate for great people, and they just don't know you exist. And that's kind of part of the process. It's really about showing how great you would be as a candidate. And it really is just about making yourself visible. And they do accept you because they want to win whatever side of this political spectrum. If they have a great candidate and they align with their beliefs, left, right, center, wherever you are, believe me, anybody who's behind the scenes at whatever level is really excited about those kind of people.
Yeah, I think another thing is also just because something else I hear specifically around like women in politics is being approached to run, but in an unwinnable area. And it's because they have an idea of, wanting to hold off other ridings for people who, might have, better networks, more money, access to connections, have been, lifelong friends, have gone to, have summered together, for example. So running in a winnable riding is a whole other thing, right? Because putting someone who has like potential exceptional talent in politics in a losing riding sends such a bad signal, not only to them but to everyone in their area who might come along with them, right?
But sometimes I won in my first campaign, and so that's great, but that's not normal. Losing sometimes can actually be a very effective tool to raise your profile and get you trained. And so I look at Adrienne Carr, who I ran with, who ran at the same election, first election that I ran, and she won, I won. She's Green Party. I think she'd run, I don't know, Mike, I can't remember, I think 11 times before that or more, 20 times. I don't even know how many times Adrienne Carr ran before she won as a city councillor in Vancouver. But man, she had a high profile. When she decided to run for city council in Vancouver, everybody knew who she was. She'd never won an election in her life. But when she did win and she got into office, because she spent so many years fighting to be in office, she was an exceptional councillor. And I became very good friends with her, and we were aligned a lot of the times on issues at City Hall in Vancouver. For whatever, I was very focused on transparency and good governance as kind of and financial side. And she and I were very aligned with that and outreach. And so, but it was because she'd lost so many times that I think is one of the reasons she became a really good elected politician.
I would argue, I can understand what you're saying. I would argue that because she was running under the Green Party banner, right? Really as kind of a one-woman ship, right? That she was able to own that political area and attach like that her brand and become a go-to. I don't think you could say the same for someone who was running under a banner that had or for a party that had more candidates. So I think there's more opportunity if you were doing that as an independent and maybe potentially losing over and over and over again. But you would have to have a strong brand or personal brand or a brand that you're attaching yourself to.
Yeah, it's interesting. And for me, after I decided to leave politics, that was helped the NPA in Vancouver. They ended up electing all women to council in that election. I think it was, Mike, was it 5 or 6 women elected to council, no men. And so the full slate of women won in 2018. So that was really exceptional. And I think, and the council, that council itself was dominated by women. And I think that was amazing to see. And really, it had a mayor, a man as a mayor, and I think they had 2 councillors that were men and 9 women or 8 women. So it was, and I think that I was proud of that for the party that I had been a part of, that ran more women than men, a lot more, and they won, and the men didn't.
Yeah, I think it's just the labels that can be attached to a woman who runs and loses and loses and loses and loses can be a little bit different in a political atmosphere or climate, in the back rooms, as opposed to a man who runs and loses.
It's interesting though, Sarah, as you asked that question, because my mind, I've worked all over the states, primary, state level, federal level, and all over Canada, all 3 levels. And I have like dozens of parachute white male candidates that can come to mind. I can think of 2 with the BC NDP right now that were flown in from Ottawa into these like safe ridings, these kind of union white men. And I'm trying to rack my brain for when that's been done for a woman. I can kind of think of Carol Taylor and almost nothing else.
I think Surrey, Surrey, this last by-election, we had
Eleanor
a BC
Sturgill,
liberal.
she's great, yeah. So you're right. If you were to look at the percentage, it's probably 90% happening to a white man and 10%, minority.
Well, and like, to get into the politics of it, the BC NDP also has an equity policy, which specifically says who can be put in as a candidate, and they went against that. But yeah. So it definitely happens. One of the things we like to talk about is these kind of like complex and nuanced issues. So that's a real decision that you're going to face. Like, let's say there's a party you really like, and you have a chance now to be, run for MLA or MPP or even MP, but they want to put you in a riding that's maybe not the greatest riding. And so we will take you and like teach you, okay, let's look at the numbers in that riding. Okay, who's run in the past? What are the issues on the ground? Forget the party for a second. Is there a path for you? If you were to do this really, really well with a great team, and, is there a path for you there, either to get your name and your issue on the table or to actually win? And so, despite these party politics and games that, quite frankly, they're tough to deal with, but we're going to have to confront them together. We look at like, how can we empower you despite all of that to actually maybe have a winning path?
Yeah.
So you talked about team. So is there anyone else on your team that, or who else is on your team that complements the expert advice that you, George, and Emil offer?
Well, my agency team is all women, but our partner in the States, because we're expanding into the US in September, is a female, women-driven agency. They mostly marketing. They're not politically focused, but they are an advertising agency and a course marketing agency. And it's a woman that is the CEO. And so she's our partner down there, but she's not interested in doing this. I'll tell you that right now. But she might be actually eventually if I can talk her into it. But she doesn't talk politics, but she talks leadership for sure. And that's something we'll definitely talk about. And she's a Facebook expert, which Mike is as well. So the two of them can have a great conversation, I'm sure, about Facebook and how, meta and how important that is to politics on every single level. It dominates, and it's a big part of certainly how I won way back in the day, and it's certainly how Mike runs these campaigns, and that's a huge part of it. So having a partner in the States that understands the American politic or American media structure and all those things is really crucial to us for success.
Yeah, obviously, and going back to Campaign University being, for those who you say are discontented with the current state of politics. Obviously, we're seeing American politics exported by the truck full currently in interjecting into Canadian political systems and agendas and policy making decisions. So, that's definitely something that we all need to be aware of.
It's one of the things that is going back to the beginning, but it's really, really frustrating for me because I can tell you right now that just ask anybody, okay, who right now with Trudeau, who's going to replace Trudeau? I don't know. How can you not think of anybody that's great to replace Trudeau right then? Why is that? Women or men? Like, what's going on that we can't?
I have a short list.
Yeah, I bet you do. But if you ask the general public, they go, I don't know. They really have and there are some definitely women that are strong in his cabinet, but they're not popping up as his replacements, which I find very interesting. And it's something that is a statement to, I think, and even states, you look at the debate this week and with Trump and he's dominating and you're like, and then you saw these people that, and they're basically attacking each other for being not credible. It's like, okay. And where are all the great people? Where are they? And so that's really, really, really important to us, is that this is what this is about for us. We want, it's crucial for democracy for the future.
Yeah. One other thing just on that, I think there's another thing going on where in both the States and Canada, there's sort of an erosion of the trust in the institution of like elections and politics and even government. And you're seeing with technology, things are just becoming more and more decentralized. You can't even share news right now on Facebook or Instagram, which has completely changed the way information is traveling from people to people, and you're getting these silos. So I think, where it looks like there may be a disruption going on, there's always an opportunity in the disruption. And now more than ever, if you can empower yourself and give yourself the information you need to run in this kind of confusion that's going on in politics and elections right now all over North America, there's a chance to really build yourself a knowledge base and a platform where you can build yourself up and run and have a lot of power in the game like you couldn't before. So there is a power shift going on as well, which I think is great for good people that want to get into it.
Generational for sure. There's an opportunity for anybody in their 20s and 30s right now to really rise up quickly, really quickly.
Yeah. Well, I'll self-promote myself and say that one of the ways I'm navigating around Bill C-18 and the blocks on news being shared on Meta and on social media is I started a Madam Premier WhatsApp group where we share news because there's no censoring of content there, like sharing of links. And we're at almost 200 engaged women who engage on different topics. And it's been really thoughtful and respectful. So if anyone is interested who's listening to that, you can send me a message on social media and I will share the link to that with you. And then I'll also put in a plug for a paid event that I'm running on September 21st called Bragging Rights, which is an event specifically designed for women to brag about their accomplishments and to practice that in a safe environment where we only say amazing things about ourselves. And I think in a political context, in a business context, in whatever area women happen to be in, when we talk positively about ourselves, we can be seen as being, just a little bit too ambitious by men and women. And so this event is designed to counter that, to practice.
Right.
And then I'll give, because I'm not sure when I'm going to record the next podcast. In October, we're doing the next edition of the Madam Premier Book Club, where we're going to be reading a book called The Success Myth. So there are lots of things happening, I think, in the Canadian political landscape, like Campaign University. There seems to be kind of an explosion right now of things in the political landscape around tapping into people who might not otherwise be connected or networked, or kind of just, finding that untapped potential from across the political spectrum. So I think
I'm hoping that's a wake up. It's a wake up. That's because of that people are feeling the same way that Mike and I feel, and Emil, like, whoa, we need people, we need great people, and I think maybe that's part of that. I think we're realizing as a society that, oh my God,
well, I mean,
we're in trouble.
When we just went through an election here in Alberta, not like several months ago, and people who were being tagged as star candidates, respectfully, I disagree. And, going into the next BC election, which reminds me is next year,
Next October. Yeah.
next
Year
October.
October.
So, I'm beginning to see the BC United, the rebranded BC Liberal Party starting to I think roll out some candidates. So we'll
Yep.
see. There, I think at this time, like, and to your point, people are, I think we need really good people right now, like more than ever, maybe, to get into political leadership. We don't need more, more status quo, more people who have, we really need diverse people with diverse backgrounds, with diverse voices who will, take things to the next level.
And it's the same old people too. You're like, oh my God, that person's running again.
Yeah.
Like, enough, leave, go, leave,
Well,
leave your space for somebody else, please.
Well, but also I think that voters are smart enough to understand that, and they have the expectation that candidates and political parties, like whoever it is that's running, have the right and the expectation to think that the candidates will look and be representative of the populations that they are going to be representing. So, like the time when I look at, for example, the BC Liberal Caucus currently, it's not that way. It's not reflective of BC in any way. So, going into that election, my belief and hope for that party is that they, really change things up, which I think they hopefully will do. But across the country, like, things have changed, and we really need good people.
I think for in BC, Kevin Falcon, I think will take a play, but Gordon Campbell's playbook, really raising the bar on women running for office. I would hope. I think he comes from that school from Gordon Campbell, so I'm going to assume that he's going to think about that very, very strongly. I'm not involved at all in that party, so I don't know.
I think there's enough strong women around him that will, tell him otherwise, hopefully.
Yes, I agree. There definitely are. And again, I think that there's some people, it's time for them to leave in those safe spots, those safe ridings. It's over. You got to, I left politics after 2 terms because 2 terms is enough. You don't, unless you're running for leadership or something, I don't think anybody should stay in longer than 2 terms. It's a lot of work. Your creativity starts to wane. And I think it's, 8 years, usually that's a long time to be giving back to your community. And I think you don't want to get too wedged in there. And I think you have to start thinking about who's following me and how do I find great people to follow me into office, and when should I leave? Politicians are prone to stay too long until they actually get booted out. So I didn't want that for me.
I think that is the right approach, but obviously there are people who will hang on with every last
yes. I can think of a couple
breath that they have.
Literal in a couple of cases, I can think of.
Yes.
It's really funny, Sarah, because I've just been thinking a few times, because I went to UBC business school. So, and then I went to, so for those of you that I grew up in Vancouver, kind of on the west side. So I was always in an environment where there was 10% white people and 90% Asian, either mainland Chinese or Hong Kong Chinese, all through my school and then all the way through my university. And then all of a sudden I was in politics, and every meeting I was in was like all white guys. And it was so clear to me that there was such a difference between, where I actually lived and went to school, and then these rooms that I was now in, immediately after university. And so I couldn't agree more. Just getting the representative sample of the actual population of that you're governing and running to govern is so vital.
Well, and
but it's tough.
Increases your chances of electoral success too, right? Because someone who understands the community, who maybe speaks language, who has really strong ties, who just isn't Bob from an accountant who I've known for 30 years.
But the cultural gap on getting people to run for office from different ethnicities is really tough sometimes. It's just not in their makeup to run. And so you have these conversations with a lot of the Chinese Canadian community, and they just don't want to run. They don't want to do it. They just don't want to expose
that's
themselves.
Like a whole other episode, George.
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge. And in Vancouver especially. I mean,
is there anything that you're tapping into then to address that gap? on the.
It goes back to the basics of what we're trying to. We're just giving you all the information you need. The process doesn't matter really. It's the same process for everybody. If you just follow the steps that we've outlined in the paid course and just in the process that we're following in our Facebook group, if you follow these steps, because Mike and I have been doing it for a long time in Emil, you generally can have success. You just have to follow the steps. It really is that straightforward. I think a lot of people get given shortcuts, but you have to assume if you're getting into politics, there are no shortcuts. So you just need to do each step along the way that we laid out for you. Every single step that we know exists is laid out for you to be able to win. You would hope in a riding or wherever you might be running. This could even work for Strata Council. It's the same process. You just got to follow these steps. And if you're somebody of note that you think, okay, I should be put in a better riding or whatever, that's part of the conversation as well. I mean, you have to be able to position yourself to say, hey, no, I'm not running in there. I'm going to run over here, and you need me. We help with that too, and I think that's all part of it. And but people don't understand it, so that's kind of why we created this. It's really to show you this process that exists that a lot of people haven't wanted to tell anybody about, and we're actually getting a lot of heat for this because we're giving away we get a lot of people who are insiders who are like, why are you guys doing this? Like, why are you giving away everything like this? Why? And because we're worried about democracy, truly. And priority number one is that. And of course, there's a paid section that we want to make some money so we can get paid for our time. But really, and so there is some pushback within some of the networks that we know about us giving away.
I think that's a sign of something being done that needs to be done, and the democratizing of literally everything. So, would they take it? Do they take issue with Bitcoin? Probably not. So it's all very convenient when it comes to what's in your own backyard. But so if someone is interested in joining the Facebook group, which is free, I'm a member of it, and finding out about the different webinars that you're putting on, how do they do that?
Ahead,
you can just search the Campaign University in Facebook and it'll be right there. And then there's just some questions about who you are and where you want to run. And then you fill those out and we accept you to the group. All the content there is free. If you want more one-on-one work, we're happy to do that. And there's a paid course as well. But, we're covering a lot of that content as we go. And just as we've been talking about, I just really want to kind of leave everyone with the hopeful thought is we're trying to put power back in your hands. So when you do get into the political arena, you don't have to sit in a room and think, oh, I don't know about what they're talking about. And it all sounds like this, weird language and insider club. So when you get in those meetings, when you decide to put your foot forward, you know the whole game right in front of you, and you're just able to navigate it better. So we want to help you have the power back in your hands, and that's really the goal.
Yeah, I like it. I like people having the power. So thanks for doing this. Thanks for giving me some of your time. And if someone wants to check out the website, what is that?
It's thecampaignuniversity.com. We don't have the budget to get Campaign University, so we had to put the in front of it. Thecampaignuniversity.com.
Well, I mean, you didn't have to go .ca, so
I don't think that was available either.
Oh, really? Interesting. You should be. Maybe that's a follow up is to find out who
owns this. Yeah,
who owns that and what do they want to do with it?
Okay. I know we're wrapping up, Sarah, but as we researched this, George and I went and looked all across North America, like, is this being done? And Europe and Australia and everywhere else that we could work. And it was fascinating. Unless you were kind of a activist left-wing organization or a party, no one was training you. So you were getting trained in an environment with politicals that want to surround you and train you the way they want you to go. There was nothing where it was outside of that environment where it was just for you yourself before you went into the game. So, in terms of the name and everything, it was amazing to us that literally all the campaign training that's out there, and there's a lot, it's all very party driven or, ideologically driven. There's nothing really just for you.
Yeah, I will share. There's a book that you should probably both read. I have it at Madam Premier. It's by Peggy Nash. It's called Women Winning. She shares kind of a step-by-step explainer of what steps that she thinks that, although she writes it for progressive or leftist leaning people to get elected, but I think you can parse it out and apply the lessons. to anyone. But like I firmly champion more of what you're doing in the Canadian political landscape, because I see it as, we're already in the water and the tsunami is approaching us in terms of what's happening democratic, like with our democracy. And it's always, it's after the wave hits that people are like, oh, I wish I had seen this coming. I'm so upset about this. I can't believe that it resulted in, this decision being made or being impacted this way. And my takeaway for everyone always when I speak to people is like, I want you to care more now rather than later. Don't wait until it's, too late. Like care before it happens. And that's, with democracy and Canadian democracy, there's, it's hard to, there's so much happening right now and going into a possible federal election, next year or the year after. We really have to be on watch and be prepared.
100%.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, thanks for joining me. For anyone who's interested, definitely check out the Campaign University on Facebook and on their website. And I'm going to keep watching and try to keep tuning in when I can to your webinars. So thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.